that's a debate even among reparations activists. There's a lot of schools of thought. Probably the most recent one, which I tend to reject, is that has been brought forward by Sandy Darity in his new book. I know Sandy very well, but it's almost like a money only with him. He brings forth and did a study that said that reparations in terms of being owed is something like $6.25 quadrillion. Now, that's a ridiculous figure as far as I'm concerned. But being on C-SPAN and all these other shows, it kind of trivializes what reparations are all about.
Yeah, we just started and we're already in the bullshit. They are already lying about Dr. Darity's position. And if you're looking at the screen, you could look at the study that Thomas Kramer and Dr. Darity were involved in, where Dr. Darity is talking about how the U.S. government owes us 12 to 13 trillion dollars. And this other professor, Thomas Kramer, is actually the one who initially has this 18.6 trillion figure, and then he comes to another figure, which is the 6.2 quadrillion dollars. Now, clearly, the difference between these two figures that are being presented by Thomas Kramer are based on the interest rates. And what he does is come to a very meticulous calculation of what is owed to the slaves and their descendants based on wages. But you know what? I'm not just going to go into describing this thing. Let me go ahead and have Thomas Kramer explain how he came up with this amount.
So the land-based method, I calculated all of those in 2018 dollars to make them comparable. The land-based method produced an estimate of $2.978 trillion based on Darity's work. A price-based method, $13.2 trillion in 2018 dollars based on Marchetti, also in the Wealth of Races. And the wage-based method that I published in 2015 would in 2018 dollars be $18.6 trillion. Those are whopping amounts, but I want to show you how I arrived at this estimate. And basically it's fairly simple. You need the number of enslaved people in every year from 1776 to 1860. And I use US Census information to get estimates. And then historical unskilled wages from 1776 to 1860. I'm ignoring centuries of colonial slavery and the years from 1861 to 1865, as the number of enslaved remaining is difficult to estimate. So overall, it's a conservative estimate. Here are the US Census figures about the population of the enslaved in every decade from 1790 to 1860. And what I do to get the annual estimates is I use linear interpolation for the years in between censuses, and I'm using linear extrapolation for the year 1776 to 1789. Other methods could be used, but this is a fairly simple way. And then I have the production workers' hourly compensation in nominal dollars for the year 1790 to 1860. And you see that in 1790, the wage was only 2 cents and it didn't rise much by 1860. So those are extremely puny amounts, again, arriving at a conservative estimate. And here's an excerpt of my Excel spreadsheet. In the first column, I have the year. Then I have the number of the enslaved, italics if it's estimated, bold print if it's measured. And for wage as well, italics if estimated and bold print if measured. And then the hours per year, that's the number of enslaved times all the days in the year times all the hours in the day. And that multiplied with the wage gives the annual total. And that is then accumulated up and compounded with only 3% interest. And this goes at the bottom of the page till 1794, but I continue this process until 1860. And from then on, I use this formula to compound it up to 2018, again at 3%, which barely makes up for inflation. I arrive at a total amount in 2018 dollars of $18.58 trillion. For comparison's sake, the US GDP in 2018 was $20.89 trillion. So it's roughly 1 year worth of the US GDP, conservatively estimated. Taking an interest rate of 6%, that's the interest rate Georgetown University used in its sales contract when it sold 272 slaves in 1838 to save the institution from financial ruin. If I use that percentage, 6%, the debt balloons to $6.2 quadrillion. So basically what I take from this calculation is the interest rate will be the single most important number in any negotiations between the African-American descendants of the enslaved and the US federal government.
All right, so we're already past that lie, but let's look at these other critiques of Dr. Darity. Apparently, for Dr. Darity, it's all about the money, and when he went on C-SPAN, he was saying these outlandish figures that could never be paid, and Dr. Winbush is just the motherfucker that would handle it so much better than Dr. Darity, I guess. So, to be fair, let's look at what Dr. Winbush said when he was on C-SPAN. Let's see if it's this radical idea that is completely different from money and at the same time that is practical enough to appeal to white America in ways that are drastically different than Dr. Darity's proposal.
Let me put one figure on the table. This is on page 313 of the book, in a series of conversations you did with people supporting and opposing the idea for education reparations, a budget of $128 billion.
Actually, those figures are small. We've got Richard America of Georgetown University, an economist, has said that the entire wealth in terms of unpaid labor by African Americans in this country is somewhere between $5 to $10 trillion. Another study that was done in Africa just a few years ago computed the entire cost of enslavement, extraction from Africa, minerals, everything, the entire colonialism, enslavement at $777 trillion, at $777 trillion, at $777 trillion. So we're not talking about small numbers here at all.